Look, I need to get this out because I'm still processing what just happened, and honestly, I don't even know where to start with this mess. But Reddit always gives it to me straight, so here we go. 2 days ago, I was at my construction job, working on a commercial building project downtown. I've been doing electrical work for about 8 years now, and yeah, I know the safety protocols inside and out. But sometimes accidents just happen, you know? I was running conduit on the third floor when this scaffolding support gave way. The whole section I was on shifted, and I went down hard, landed wrong on my left leg, and heard this crack that I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. The guys got me to the hospital pretty quick. Turns out I fractured my tibia in 2 places and tore some ligaments in my knee. Doctor said I'm looking at surgery and probably 3 months before I can even think about going back to work. 3 months. Do you understand what that means for someone like me who lives paycheck to paycheck? My company has decent insurance, but workers' comp is going to be a nightmare to navigate. So I'm lying in this hospital bed, leg elevated, pumped full of pain medication, trying to process that my entire life just got turned upside down. And naturally, the first person I want to talk to is Lauren, my wife of 4 years. We've been together for 6 total. She's always been my rock, you know? The person who talks me through the tough stuff. I call her cell phone. It goes straight to voicemail. I figure she's probably at work or busy with something. Lauren works at a marketing firm downtown, always has meetings and client calls. I get it. So I wait about an hour and try again. Same thing, straight to voicemail. By the third call, I'm starting to get worried. Not about her, but about us. About how we're going to handle this financially. About how I'm going to be laid up for months. About whether my job will even be there when I get back. I needed to hear her voice. Needed her to tell me we'd figure it out together like we always do. Fourth call around dinner time, still nothing. Now I'm getting frustrated because I know she checks her phone constantly. This woman can't go 5 minutes without looking at Instagram or checking work emails. There's no way she hasn't seen 4 missed calls from her husband who's in the hospital. The fifth call, she picks up. Finally. And I can already tell something's off because there's loud music in the background and people laughing. It sounds like she's at some kind of party or bar, which doesn't make sense because it's a Tuesday evening and she should be at home. I start to tell her what happened, about the accident and my leg and the surgery I need. I'm trying to explain how scared I am about the money situation and how long recovery is going to take. And she cuts me off. Are you still crying about your little accident? I told you I'm done babysitting a pathetic worker. I actually thought I misheard her at first. The pain medication was making me a bit fuzzy and the music on her end was pretty loud, so I asked her to repeat herself, thinking maybe I was confused. Sorry, can't hear your pathetic whining over the music. I'm having fun with some guys who actually know how to live. Guys, plural. Having fun. While her husband is in the hospital with a serious injury. But wait, it gets better. I tried to ask her where she was, what she was talking about, why she was being so cruel when I needed her most. And she just kept going. Maybe if you die, I'll finally get your life insurance and be free of your whining. Don't call again, I'm turning off my phone. The nurse who was checking my IV heard every single word through the speaker. This woman, probably in her 50s, been working healthcare for decades, and I watched her face just change. She didn't say anything, but she gave me this look like she'd seen this situation before and knew exactly what it meant. I just smiled at her and said everything was fine. What else was I supposed to do? Break down crying in front of a stranger? Start ranting about how my wife just told me she hopes I die so she can collect insurance money? Here's the thing that really gets me. This didn't come out of nowhere. Looking back over the past few months, Lauren's been different, more distant, always on her phone, staying out later, picking fights over stupid stuff. She started complaining that I don't make enough money, that she's tired of living in our apartment instead of a house, that all her friends' husbands have better jobs. Last month, she made some comment about how she married too young and never got to experience being single in her 20s. She said it like a joke, but there was something behind it that made me uncomfortable. When I tried to talk to her about it, she brushed it off and said I was being insecure. The worst part is, I actually started believing I was the problem. Started thinking maybe I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't making enough money, wasn't giving her the life she wanted. I picked up extra shifts, worked overtime every week for 2 months trying to save up for a down payment on a house. Thought that would make her happy. Turns out none of that mattered because, while I was breaking my back trying to build our future, she was apparently out having fun with other guys. So now I'm stuck in this hospital bed, facing months of recovery and financial stress, and the person who's supposed to be my partner just told me she hopes I die. The nurse came back about an hour later and asked if I had family she could call. I told her my brother Patrick lives about 2 hours away and gave her his number. Patrick showed up this morning and he was furious when I told him what happened. He wanted to drive to Lauren's work and confront her, but I told him not to. Right now I need to focus on getting through surgery and figuring out my next steps. But I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not sad. I'm not heartbroken. I'm angry. Really, really angry. Because this phone call showed me exactly who Lauren really is. And apparently who she's been all along. The woman I thought I married would never have said those things to me. Especially not when I was hurt and vulnerable and needed her most. I've got a lot of time to think while I'm laid up here. And I'm starting to see patterns I ignored before. Starting to remember things that didn't quite add up. And I'm realizing that Lauren didn't just suddenly become this cruel. She's been showing me who she is for months and I just refuse to see it. Surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. After that, I'll have nothing but time to plan my next moves. Update 1. Okay, Reddit, buckle up, because this situation has escalated in ways I never saw coming. First off, thanks to everyone who commented on my last post. Reading your responses while I was doped up on pain meds actually helped me realize I wasn't going crazy. A lot of you called exactly what was happening. And honestly, you were right. Surgery went fine. 3 screws and a plate in my tibia, knee reconstruction, the whole 9 yards. Doctor says I'll be on crutches for at least 8 weeks, then physical therapy for months. But that's not why I'm posting again. Lauren showed up at the hospital Thursday morning, about 6 hours after my surgery. I was still pretty out of it from anesthesia when she walked into my room carrying flowers and acting like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just told me she hoped I would die so she could collect life insurance money. She started with this whole performance about how sorry she was for missing my calls, how she'd been so worried about me, how she rushed over as soon as she could get away from work. The nurse from Tuesday was on shift again and I watched her face when Lauren walked in. She knew exactly who this was, and she was not buying any of it. I let Lauren talk for about 5 minutes before I asked her point blank about the phone call, about the music, about the guys she was having fun with, about telling me she was done babysitting a pathetic worker. And man, watching her scramble to come up with an explanation was almost worth the pain I was in. First, she tried to say I must have misheard her because of the medication. When I told her the nurse heard every word, she switched to saying she was at a work happy hour and had been drinking, that she didn't mean any of it. Then when I pressed her about whose phone she was using and why she was at a work event on a Tuesday night, she got defensive and started turning it back on me. She said I was being paranoid and jealous, that I always assumed the worst about her, that maybe if I trusted her more, she wouldn't feel like she had to walk on eggshells around me. Classic manipulation tactics. But here's the thing. I wasn't buying it anymore. That phone call had ripped away whatever blinders I'd been wearing. So I started asking more specific questions about where exactly this work happy hour was, about which coworkers were there, about why her phone was turned off for hours afterward, about why she hadn't called the hospital to check on me or even bothered to find out if I was okay. That's when she really showed her true colors. She got angry, told me I was being controlling and interrogating her like some kind of detective, said she shouldn't have to justify her whereabouts to someone who clearly doesn't trust her. Then she hit me with this gem. Maybe this accident was exactly what I needed. To realize that I can't just expect her to drop everything every time something happens to me. I'm lying in a hospital bed with a surgically reconstructed leg and she's telling me I can't expect her to care when something happens to me. Patrick was supposed to come back that afternoon to drive me home when I got discharged, but he showed up early and walked right into the middle of this conversation. Lauren was mid-rant about how she has her own life and her own needs when my brother appeared in the doorway. The look on Patrick's face when he heard what she was saying was something else. He's usually pretty laid back, doesn't get involved in drama, but he stepped into that room and told Lauren she needed to leave. Not asked, told her. She tried to argue with him too, said this was between her husband and her, and he had no right to interfere. Patrick just looked at her and said if she cared about her husband at all, she would have been here Tuesday night instead of out partying while he was having emergency surgery. That's when Lauren really lost it. She started screaming about how she was tired of everyone treating her like the villain, tired of being judged for having a social life, tired of being married to someone who couldn't even do his job without getting hurt. She said maybe she should have listened to her sister Jane, who told her not to marry a blue-collar worker in the first place. Her sister Jane, who I've met maybe 3 times in 4 years and who always acted like I wasn't good enough for Lauren. Apparently, Jane had been in Lauren's ear about our relationship for months, telling her she settled, telling her she could do better, telling her she was wasting her 20s on someone with no ambition. But here's what really got me. Lauren didn't deny any of it. She stood there nodding along like Jane's opinions about our marriage were completely valid. Like her sister's judgment of me was something she'd been thinking about too. Patrick told her to get out. Lauren grabbed her purse and said fine, she'd leave, but I shouldn't expect her to come running every time I needed something. She was done enabling my dependence on her. Then she walked out and I haven't heard from her since. That was 3 days ago. I've been staying at Patrick's house since I got discharged because navigating stairs on crutches is basically impossible, and our apartment is on the 3rd floor. Patrick took time off work to help me get around, drive me to follow-up appointments, all the stuff a spouse should be doing. The stuff Lauren said she was too tired of doing even though she'd never actually done any of it. Yesterday, I asked Patrick to drive me to our apartment so I could get some clothes and personal items. I figured I'd be staying with him for at least a few weeks while I recovered. Lauren's car wasn't in the parking lot, which I thought was strange since she should have been at work. I used my key to get in and immediately knew something was wrong. Half her stuff was gone. Not like she'd packed for a trip, like she'd moved out. Her dresser was mostly empty. Her side of the closet was cleared out. All her bathroom stuff was gone. She'd taken her laptop, her jewelry box, even the coffee maker we got as a wedding gift. But she'd left behind anything we'd bought together. The TV, the couch, the kitchen table, all the wedding presents that came from both our families. Like she was making some kind of statement about what belonged to her versus what belonged to us. I found a note on the kitchen counter, not a letter, just a piece of paper with 3 sentences. She said she needed space to think about what she wanted from her life. Said she was staying with Jane for a while. Said I shouldn't try to contact her because she'd call me when she was ready to talk. Patrick read the note and said it sounded like she'd been planning this for a while. Like the hospital incident was just the excuse she'd been waiting for to leave. And you know what? I think he's right. Looking back at the past few months, all those late nights and mysterious phone calls and complaints about our life, she wasn't just having doubts about our marriage. She was already halfway out the door. The accident just gave her the perfect opportunity to make me the bad guy, to paint herself as the victim of a controlling, needy husband who expected too much from her. But here's what she doesn't know. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. Being laid up with this injury has given me a lot of time to think, and I'm starting to see our entire relationship differently. Starting to remember conversations and incidents that I brushed off at the time but now make perfect sense. Like last Christmas when her family kept making jokes about when Lauren was going to find a real career man, or how she started picking fights every time I talked about wanting kids someday, or how she'd roll her eyes whenever I mentioned wanting to buy a house, like my dreams for our future were somehow beneath her. I think Lauren married me because I was safe and reliable, and she thought she could change me into whatever she decided she wanted. When that didn't work, when I stayed the same person she originally fell in love with, she started resenting me for not becoming someone else. The worst part is, I spent months thinking I was the problem, thinking I needed to make more money or be more ambitious or somehow prove I was worthy of her. I never considered that maybe she was the one who changed, who decided the life we'd built together wasn't good enough for her anymore. I'm not devastated like I thought I'd be. I'm angry, yeah, but not heartbroken. More like relieved. Like I can finally stop trying to figure out why nothing I did was ever enough for her. Patrick says I should talk to a lawyer about protecting myself financially since Lauren's behavior suggests she's been planning this exit for a while. He's probably right. I need to make sure she can't just walk away with half of everything when she's the one who abandoned our marriage. But first, I need to heal. Need to get back on my feet, literally and figuratively. Need to figure out what my life looks like without someone who apparently never wanted to be in it anyway. I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks for listening to me vent. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to tell you what people in your real life are too polite to say. Update 2. You guys were right about everything. I mean everything. Remember how some of you said Lauren was probably already involved with someone else? Yeah, well, buckle up because this gets so much worse than I thought possible. First, let me address the comments from my last update. To those asking about the lawyer, yes, I met with one Monday. Patrick drove me there and we spent 2 hours going over everything. The lawyer, this older guy named Otto, who Patrick's friend recommended, was pretty blunt about my situation. He said given Lauren's behavior and the fact that she moved out immediately after my accident, I needed to protect my assets fast. Otto helped me open a separate bank account and transfer half our savings into it. Completely legal since it's marital property, but it prevents Lauren from cleaning out our joint account while I'm laid up recovering. He also helped me change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy from Lauren to my parents, which felt weird but necessary after what she said about hoping I'd die. I've been staying at Patrick's for almost 2 weeks now, doing physical therapy 3 times a week and trying to figure out what comes next. Lauren hadn't contacted me at all since that note she left, which honestly was fine with me. I was starting to feel like maybe this whole situation would just resolve itself quietly. Then Saturday afternoon, she finally called. I almost didn't answer because I was in the middle of doing my exercises, but something made me pick up. Maybe I wanted to hear what excuse she'd come up with this time. Maybe I was just curious if she'd even ask how I was doing. She didn't. The first thing out of her mouth was asking when I was planning to move back to the apartment because she needed to come get more of her things. Not hello. Not how are you feeling. Not sorry I've been radio silent while you recover from surgery. Just demanding to know my schedule so she could avoid seeing me. I told her I'd be staying at Patrick's for at least another few weeks so she could get whatever she needed. That's when she dropped the bomb that she wasn't just getting things. She was moving the rest of her stuff out permanently because she decided she wanted a divorce. Just like that. No discussion. No attempt to work on our problems. No acknowledgement that she'd abandoned me when I needed her most. She'd made the decision unilaterally and was informing me like I was some business associate she was terminating a contract with. I asked her if this was really how she wanted to end our marriage. Over a phone call while I was recovering from major surgery. She said she'd been thinking about it for months and my accident just made her realize she couldn't pretend to be happy anymore. She said she was tired of feeling trapped in a life that wasn't what she wanted. Tired of being married to someone who had no ambition beyond working construction and living paycheck to paycheck. That stung, not gonna lie. But then I asked her what exactly she thought marriage was supposed to be, and that's when the real truth started coming out. She said she'd married me because I was stable and reliable, but she'd always hoped I would grow into someone more successful, someone who could give her the lifestyle her friends had, someone who would push himself to achieve more than just getting by. She said watching her friends' husbands get promotions and buy houses and take their wives on nice vacations made her realize she'd settled for less than she deserved. I told her maybe she should have mentioned these expectations before we got married, since I'd been completely upfront about my goals and priorities from the beginning. That's when she really showed her ass. She said I was naive if I thought people don't change, that everyone grows and wants more from life except apparently me. She said I was content to stay in the same dead-end job forever, living in the same tiny apartment, never pushing myself to be better. She said my accident was just proof that construction work was dangerous and unstable, and she wasn't going to spend the rest of her life worrying about money every time I got hurt. I pointed out that my company has good insurance, that I've been working steady for 8 years, that we've never actually struggled financially, but she cut me off and said it wasn't just about money, and it was about drive and ambition, and wanting more from life than just getting by. Then she said something that really pissed me off. She said maybe if I'd spent less time being content with mediocrity and more time trying to build something real, she wouldn't have felt like she was wasting her life being married to me. That's when I lost it a little bit. I told her that if she felt like our marriage was such a waste, maybe she should have had the decency to discuss it with me instead of staying out all night partying while her husband was in the hospital. I asked her point blank who she'd been with that night, since she'd mentioned having fun with guys who actually know how to live. The silence that followed was everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, she didn't deny it. She said she'd met someone who understood her ambitions, someone who shared her vision for what life could be. She said he was everything I wasn't. Successful, driven, able to provide the kind of future she wanted. I asked her how long this had been going on. She said it didn't matter because she'd tried to make our marriage work for months before she gave up. She said I was so oblivious to her unhappiness that she'd had to find someone else who actually paid attention to what she needed. So there it was. My wife of 4 years had been cheating on me for months and was now blaming me for driving her to it because I wasn't ambitious enough for her taste. I asked her who he was. She refused to tell me. Said it wasn't relevant because she was going to be with him now, whether I liked it or not. She said she was already staying at his place and had been since she left the apartment, not at her sister Jane's like the note said, with her new boyfriend. That's when everything clicked into place. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden complaints about our finances, the picking fights over nothing. She hadn't been having doubts about our marriage. She'd been planning her exit strategy while testing out her replacement. I told her she was a coward for not being honest with me, for letting me think I was the problem while she was already emotionally checked out and seeing someone else. She said I could think whatever I wanted, but she wasn't going to apologize for finally putting herself first for once. Finally putting herself first. Like our entire marriage had been some huge sacrifice she'd made instead of a partnership we'd both chosen. I told her she could have her divorce, but I wasn't going to make it easy for her after the way she'd handled this whole situation. That's when her tone changed completely. She started talking about how she hoped we could be mature about dividing our assets, how she didn't want this to get ugly, how we'd both invested in our life together and deserved to walk away with something. She mentioned the apartment lease, our joint savings, the wedding gifts from both families. I told her she should have thought about that before she abandoned our marriage for someone with more money. I said if she wanted a divorce, she could have one, but I wasn't feeling particularly generous towards someone who'd treated me like garbage when I was hurt and vulnerable. That's when she got nasty again. She said I was being petty and vindictive, that just because she'd found someone better didn't mean I had to act like a child about it. She said her boyfriend had already offered to help her with legal fees if I tried to make things difficult, so I shouldn't think I could intimidate her into accepting less than her fair share. Her boyfriend was going to help with legal fees. This woman had already moved in with another man and was using his money to divorce me, and she was telling me I was the one being unreasonable. I told her she could tell her boyfriend that I had my own lawyer, and we'd see what constituted a fair share for someone who abandoned their marriage. Then I hung up. Patrick was in the kitchen during most of this conversation and heard enough to get the gist. He was furious, said he'd suspected she was seeing someone else but hadn't wanted to say anything without proof. He said the way she'd acted at the hospital made sense now. She was already emotionally invested in someone else and saw me as an obstacle to her new life. You know what the worst part is? I'm not even surprised. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just chose to believe her when she said she was going through a rough patch and needed space. I trusted her when she said she was working late or out with friends. I believed her when she said she loved me but was just stressed about our future. I was so busy trying to be the husband I thought she wanted that I never stopped to ask if she actually wanted to be married to me at all. But here's what she doesn't know. I'm not the same guy I was before this accident. Maybe being laid up for weeks has given me perspective, or maybe almost losing my leg made me realize what's actually important. Either way, I'm done trying to prove myself to someone who never valued what I had to offer in the first place. Otto warned me that divorce proceedings can get nasty when there's infidelity involved, especially when the cheating spouse is already living with their new partner. He said Lauren's boyfriend paying for her legal fees could be construed as dissipation of marital assets if she's spending our money on him, or vice versa. I'm documenting everything. The phone calls, the timeline of when she moved out, the fact that she lied about staying with her sister. Otto said it all matters when it comes to determining how assets get divided. I know some of you are going to say I should just let her go and move on with my life, but after the way she treated me, after the cruel things she said when I was at my lowest point, after finding out she'd been planning this betrayal for months, I'm not feeling very forgiving. She wanted someone with more ambition? Well, she's about to find out exactly how ambitious I can be when someone tries to screw me over. Final update. Reddit. I promised you guys a final update, and holy crap, do I have one for you? Remember how I said Lauren wanted someone with more ambition? Well, turns out she got exactly what she was looking for, and it's been absolutely beautiful to watch it all fall apart. First, let me catch you up on where things stood after my last post. Lauren's moving truck came and went that weekend, like I mentioned. She took everything she'd claimed was hers, which was fine by me since Otto had already advised me to let her take personal items to avoid any drama about theft or vindictive behavior. The apartment felt empty, but honestly, it also felt peaceful for the first time in months. The divorce papers were filed 2 weeks later. Lauren's boyfriend did indeed pay for her lawyer, just like she'd threatened. Expensive one too, from some downtown firm that specializes in high-asset divorces. Otto thought it was interesting that someone would spend that kind of money on a divorce involving a construction worker and a marketing coordinator. Made him wonder what exactly this guy was expecting to get out of the relationship. That question got answered pretty quickly. See, Lauren had been posting all over social media about her new life. Instagram stories of expensive restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, shopping bags from stores I'd never heard of. She was living it up with her successful boyfriend, showing off the lifestyle she'd always wanted. Her sister Jane was loving every minute of it, commenting hard eyes on every post about how Lauren finally found someone who appreciates her worth. But here's where it gets interesting. Patrick's girlfriend Rosalie works in marketing too. Different company, but same industry. Small world, right? She mentioned seeing Lauren around town with some older guy. Thought it was weird since she knew we were married but hadn't heard anything about a divorce. When Rosalie described the guy, mid-40s, drives a BMW, always in expensive suits, Patrick put two and two together. He asked around with some guys he knows in construction and real estate, showed them Lauren's Instagram posts. Turns out Lauren's sugar daddy isn't just successful. He's married, has been for 15 years, with 3 kids. Now, before anyone jumps on me about invasion of privacy or whatever, I didn't go looking for this information. It fell right into my lap because Lauren couldn't resist broadcasting her new life all over social media. When you post pictures of yourself with someone else's husband at restaurants around town, people notice. But wait, it gets so much better. Patrick found out through his real estate connections that this guy, let's call him Ethan since that's apparently his real name, has been doing this for years. Serial cheater who targets younger women going through relationship problems, promises them the world, then moves on when the novelty wears off. He's been separated from his wife twice, but always goes back to her because she controls most of their assets through her family's business. Lauren had no idea about any of this because she was so blinded by the lifestyle upgrade that she never bothered to ask the hard questions. She just saw someone with money who paid attention to her and thought she'd hit the jackpot. The timeline became clear pretty quickly once I started paying attention. Ethan had been love-bombing Lauren for months before I got hurt, telling her she deserved better than her blue-collar husband, promising her the kind of life she'd always wanted. That's why she'd been so cruel on that phone call from the hospital. She wasn't just having doubts about our marriage. She was already emotionally invested in someone else who was telling her everything she wanted to hear. My accident just gave her the excuse she needed to pull the trigger on leaving me for him. But here's where Lauren's plan started falling apart. About 3 weeks ago, Ethan's wife found out about the affair. Not just with Lauren, but with two other women he'd been seeing over the past year. Apparently, Mrs. Ethan hired a private investigator after finding some suspicious charges on their credit cards. Lauren's expensive dinners and shopping trips? All paid for with credit cards that belonged to Ethan's marital estate. Her new designer wardrobe? Purchased with money that legally belonged to his wife too. That weekend trip to Napa? Charged to an account that Mrs. Ethan's family business owns. Mrs. Ethan filed for divorce and went scorched earth. Froze all the accounts, filed for emergency spousal support, demanded an accounting of every penny Ethan spent on his affairs. She also made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why their marriage was ending, including posting receipts of his spending on other women. Guess whose face ended up plastered all over the evidence folder? That's right. Lauren's Instagram post became Exhibit A in someone else's divorce proceedings. But the real kicker came last week. Ethan, faced with losing half his assets and paying substantial alimony to his wife, decided to cut his losses with all his side pieces. He broke up with Lauren via text message. Didn't even have the decency to do it in person after she'd blown up her entire life for him. The text said he needed to focus on his family situation and couldn't afford any more complications. He wished her well but said he wouldn't be able to help with her legal fees after all, and she needed to move out of his condo by the end of the month. Lauren panicked. She'd been living rent-free in Ethan's place and counting on him to pay for her expensive lawyer. She'd also quit her job the week before. Apparently, Ethan had been talking about relocating and told her she wouldn't need to work anymore once they moved in together permanently. So within the span of 1 week, Lauren lost her boyfriend, her housing, her income, and her legal representation. The expensive lawyer dropped her as a client when the retainer checks started bouncing. That's when she started calling me. The first call came on a Tuesday evening while I was at physical therapy. She left a voicemail saying we needed to talk about the divorce, that maybe we were being hasty and should try counseling instead. I deleted it without calling back. The second call came Thursday morning. This time she was crying, saying she'd made a mistake and realized what we had was special. She said she'd been confused and scared about our future, but losing me made her realize I was the best thing in her life. I let it go to voicemail again. By the weekend, she was calling multiple times a day. The messages got increasingly desperate. She said she'd been manipulated by someone who took advantage of her fears about our financial future. She said she never stopped loving me and would do anything to fix what she'd broken. Patrick heard one of these messages and just started laughing. He said it was amazing how quickly Lauren's perspective on our marriage changed once her rich boyfriend dumped her, and she was facing reality alone. The final straw was when she showed up at Patrick's house Sunday afternoon. I was out front working on my physical therapy exercises when her car pulled up. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days, wearing old clothes instead of her new designer wardrobe. She started with the same apologies from her voicemails, but when I didn't respond, she switched tactics. She said I was being cruel and vindictive, that she'd made one mistake and I was acting like she was some kind of monster. She said if I really loved her, I'd be willing to work through this like adults. I finally spoke up and told her that abandoning your husband while he's in the hospital isn't one mistake. It's a revelation of character. I said her mistake wasn't leaving me for someone with more money. It was thinking I'd be stupid enough to take her back when that didn't work out. She started crying harder and said she had nowhere else to go. Her sister Jane had kicked her out because the drama was affecting Jane's own marriage. Her parents were ashamed of her for cheating and refused to let her move back home. She said I was the only person who'd ever really cared about her, and she was sorry it took losing me to realize that. I looked at her and said that if she really believed I was the only person who'd ever cared about her, she should have thought about that before she told me she hoped I'd die so she could collect my life insurance money. The look on her face when I said that was everything I needed to see. She realized I wasn't the same guy she'd walked away from. I wasn't going to accept her apologies or feel sorry for her because her upgrade didn't work out the way she'd planned. Patrick came outside and told her she needed to leave. She tried to argue, but he cut her off and said if she came back, he'd call the police for harassment. She drove away, and I haven't heard from her since. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks ago. Since Lauren no longer had legal representation, she had to accept the settlement Otto proposed. I kept the apartment, my truck, my tools, and my retirement savings. She got her car and her personal belongings. That's it. The judge wasn't particularly sympathetic to someone who'd abandoned their marriage for an affair partner and then tried to reconcile when that relationship failed. Otto made sure Lauren's timeline of events was clearly documented, including the hospital incident and the fact that she was already living with another man before our separation was finalized. As for me, I'm doing better than I've been in years. Physical therapy is going great, and I should be cleared to return to work next month. I've been picking up side jobs doing electrical repairs for friends and neighbors, so money hasn't been as tight as I expected. More importantly, I feel like myself again. I'm not constantly wondering why nothing I do is good enough for someone. I'm not walking on eggshells trying to avoid setting off another fight about our future. I'm not lying awake at night wondering what I did wrong or how I can fix problems I didn't create. Patrick's been amazing through all of this, and Rosalie has become a good friend too. They've introduced me to their social circle, and I've been reminded what it's like to be around people who actually enjoy my company, instead of just tolerating it. Last week, I ran into one of Lauren's former coworkers at the hardware store. She mentioned that word had gotten around about what happened with Lauren and the married guy, and that most people thought Lauren had gotten exactly what she deserved. She said everyone remembered how Lauren used to complain about me, but seeing how she handled the divorce made them realize the problem wasn't with her husband. I don't take pleasure in Lauren's situation, but I'm not sorry for her either. She made her choices based on what she thought would make her happier, and she has to live with the consequences. I hope she eventually finds whatever it is she's looking for, but I'm glad it's not my problem anymore. The woman I thought I married would never have treated someone she loved the way Lauren treated me. The real Lauren showed me who she was when I was at my most vulnerable, and I'm grateful I got to see it before I wasted any more years trying to build a life with someone who didn't value what we had. I'm not angry anymore, Reddit. I'm free, and that feels pretty damn good.